Welcome to Chaotic Podcasts, Robert Siskind. Can I call you Bob?
Of course.
Okay, we're so happy to have you here today.
It's a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you. We've been talking for a few minutes already, and I'm loving all the stories, and
Me too.
I'm excited to get into a deeper conversation. So, we know you're a widely successful businessman, philanthropist, passionate about your community, but can you share with our audience just a little bit about yourself?
I grew up in London. I went to school here. I went to law school actually in Toronto, came back, practiced law for 15 years, and then went into business and always been involved in community in various aspects of it. I've had a wonderfully charmed life.
Yeah.
At 82, I am very happy.
Yeah, you told me you're the happiest 82-year-old you'll ever meet, right?
I think so.
I love that. That's awesome. And so you spoke about how, you find yourself to be wonderfully lucky. Can you talk about that a little bit more about why you think that is, why you believe in that luck?
I do believe in the luck, and it is unpredictable. My law practice took off because a particular client grew very large very quickly, and I happened to be his lawyer. And so I
Wow.
was able to be along his successful path. Then, when I went into business, I had good things and bad things happen over the career. And that at the end of the day, I'm eating 3 meals a day. So to me, I'm pretty
You
lucky.
consider yourself
I
lucky,
consider myself
right?
lucky.
That's awesome. What did it feel like? Sorry, just going back to when you mentioned that one client taking off, like what did that feel like when your career kind of took that sudden turn and shift and you realized you were on a really accelerated path,
It's
I
a
guess you could
graduate
say.
thing. It's a gradual thing that happened. Excuse me. He came in for some collateral reason. I gave him some advice. He said, "Are you charging me?" And I said, "No, no. I just talked to you for half an hour. Go away." And then he called me a month later and said he had a transaction with his uncle, and they both wanted a new lawyer, an independent lawyer. And it turned out that relationship endured for 10 years or more. And he grew and grew. He went across Canada, and I was able to participate as his lawyer through all that. So that was how it happened.
Wow, that is very, very
Yeah, it
cool.
was really good.
Yeah.
Lucky.
And then you also mentioned have, as I'm sure many people do, you had those like highs and lows, the goods and bads experiences of your career. How do you navigate those? And if you had to give any advice to, the younger generation starting out their careers, how to navigate those moments?
I guess the general advice is business is not a straight line. And one of the great lines, which I think is not true, is if you work hard, you'll get ahead. If you work hard, you'll work hard. And if you get lucky, you'll get ahead.
Okay.
So, what I would say to young people is, in general terms, decide who you are. Look in a mirror. If you want to be an entrepreneur, then you have to decide. Sometimes you drink champagne and sometimes you drink beer. And you have to be satisfied with both. If you if you're not happy with that, be an employee, but be the best employee you can. Look for different things. As an entrepreneur, you look for opportunities. If you're going to be a good employee, you look for the right company to work for. And that's not just money. The money, of course, is important. You have to support you or and the need for money changes as your lifestyle changes. But once you reach the plateau of the money that you need, the rest is lifestyle. You may have a family, you may have outside interests, whether it's sport or community work, and then you balance it and you work to balance it. So that's what I would say. The first thing to a young person graduating school is look in the mirror and decide who you are.
Whoa, I that really resonated. I'm listening to you talk. I actually got chills to thinking about the looking in the mirror. That was an awesome thing to hear. I'm gonna take that one with me. So, what got you started in entrepreneurship? What was your leading passion, and how did you find yourself wanting to pursue that field of being an entrepreneur rather than an employee?
The I was a lawyer and I was having great success. I was very happy with my law practice. And then I heard Buckminster Fuller. a name you may not know, who created the geodesic dome. He
Okay.
spoke at Western.
Okay.
He said you should do three things in your life, and that resonated with me. Here I was, a young lawyer. I had a wife, three children, a station wagon, a dog, and I belonged to the squash club. I was the perfect 40-year-old. But his advice resonated, and I wanted to try risk. I would give advice as a lawyer, and then I would go home and have dinner and go to a movie. They would have the excitement of making a business decision and living with risk. And so I was hoping that someday some rich, spectacular business person would come along and say, Bob, you're the best lawyer. Here's the keys to my plane, and I want you to run my international company. Then I realized they're not going to do that. Why would they when they can hire my services for a couple $100? So I have to take the plunge. So I said to my wife, I'm going to quit. And she said, the best thing ever. Do you want to sell the house? I said, you got a lot of brownie points for that
Yeah.
one. I said to my business partners, our law firm was about 15 at the time, that I'm going to quit. And they said, would you take a year off and just think about it? Like you're going through your mid-age crazies. We'll give you an office. Think about it. I had three secretaries at the time. I kept the one. By the way, she stayed with me for 45
Oh,
years
wow.
and decided to try business. And that was the turning point. That was 1982. And then I tried different businesses, some which didn't work out and some which did.
Yeah. So you know, you wouldn't know the wins and the successes without the failures, right? So how do you, I'm trying to figure out the way to word this. How, like, there's a risk with becoming an entrepreneur, I guess, and taking that plunge. And so how do you overcome any sort of fear that comes along with that, or fear of the unknown? And am I making a mistake, self-doubt? How do you push past all those limiting beliefs and take the plunge?
Your questions are quite appropriate to what I went through. I remember waking up at just under 40 because I quit just before my 40th birthday, waking up 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night, perspiring, thinking, I'm almost 40 and I haven't failed. And I could fail.
Yeah.
And how am I going to be able to handle that if I do? And then I just decided to overcome it. Just
Just decided.
just decided to try it. I had enough money for maybe a year and a half of 2 years without looking to feed my family. I certainly couldn't retire at 39, but I had enough for a little bit. And I decided to take the plunge with the support of my family.
Right.
So you just do it.
You just do it. Like
Just,
like Nike, you just do
just
it.
like Nike.
You
just
remember
do
that
it.
you have free will and that you can just take
Just-
whatever path you want.
just do it.
Yeah. And I'm sure the support of your family was so important
Very
in those
important.
decisions as well, right?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. It's so funny that you said my questions were appropriate for the conversation, because I think for myself and for anyone who's listening, like, these are the things we want to hear, because so many young people are like taking those endeavors and are graduating and are moving on. And I think we, and I can speak for myself, have a lot of those fears as well about like how to take those
course.
risks and jump in, right? So it's really nice and inspiring to hear that if other people like yourself can do it and take the plunge, that anyone
The
can.
hardest part of moving forward is pulling the trigger, making the decision.
The hardest part is starting.
You analyze, and the old expression, don't analyze to the point you become paralyzed.
I've
You
never heard that.
you have to make the decision. And probably the most influential book I ever read in my life is called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by a guy named Daniel Kahneman. He just died, unfortunately. He was a psychologist in the States, although he got a Nobel Prize for economics. And his area of study was, how do you make a decision when you don't have all the information? That's the hardest part of life to me, is making that decision. It's not ready, fire, aim, which is just crazy time. Analyze it, think about it. I used to make a line in a piece of paper, and I put all the negatives on one side and all the positives on the other side.
Like your pros and cons.
The pros and cons.
Yeah.
And at the end, I just keep writing them down, and saying which column's longer.
That's what I do.
It works.
Whatever column's longer, there you go.
That's right. It works.
But I mean, I guess I think it's also worked out a few ways for me where it depends on like the gravity too. Maybe you have so many cons, but the pros are just
Right.
everything.
Yeah, they're not of equal value,
Yeah,
for
of equal
sure.
value. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, you just got to dive in sometimes, right? And even I
It's just
totally agree that the hardest part is starting. Even that's something I tell myself with the little things of my day. Even sometimes just starting an assignment that I've been dreading is so hard. But just open the document and get the title down
get started.
and get started. And then it's smooth sailing from there usually.
I think universities and colleges fail us in one respect. They're so geared to success, they forget to teach us what failure means. The richest man who I have ever met, who I did some business with for a number of years, just died. He was worth $3.5 billion.
Wow.
He went bankrupt twice.
Oh wow.
He didn't lie on the ground for very long. As soon as he was on the ground, he stood up, did something else. Took huge amounts of risk, way more than I would
Yeah.
have. But he was $3.5 billion when he died. And so I think we have to understand that failure doesn't mean you are a failure. It means the project is a failure or something happened. Look what's happening in the last couple of days in the United States with Trump's tariffs. There are people who've been doing very good business for a number of years, and in 1 hour, they were wiped out
Yeah.
through no fault of their own. They're sitting in Windsor making auto parts. So accept failure, accept rejection. If I can just expand a little bit more,
Please. Yes.
I like the story of Starbucks.
Okay.
Starbucks was started by a guy from New York who went out west, and he met a guy selling coffee. He worked for him, and there was this little startup called Starbucks. Wound up buying Starbucks, expanded it, then sold it, then went back into it. And he had this idea of making a coffee house that wasn't a Tim Hortons where you drive through all the time. Turns out he did have eventually drive through, but it didn't start that way. And so he went to Chicago and he said, I want to have European type of coffee where people sit down and they visit and they talk.
Yeah.
So he knocked on 276 doors with this idea. And 276 doors said to him, son, that's just another coffee house. The 277th guy said to him, son, I think you're onto something. And they're now both billionaires.
Yeah.
So if you have an idea and you're pushing forward with it, have big shoulders, wear an umbrella, and learn how to accept rejection. Just move on.
That's a great piece of advice because it doesn't define you. It just,
No, it
everyone
doesn't.
has a different opinion on what could be successful and what couldn't be. And just because one person has a different opinion than the 277th person.
You're the same person the day before and
No.
the day after.
Yeah, it's
You
true.
got lucky. You met the 277th
If
person.
anything, rejection just makes you more resilient to it,
Should
right?
make.
Because you're able to get back up when you're down. Yeah. Wow.
When I am rejected and if I'm looking for financing, for instance, for a project, and a bank or a trust company turn me down, I very often say to them, who's in the business? Who's doing it? They know more than I do because they're competitive all the time. And they'll say, well, Bob, we won't do that because of a firm policy.
Right.
But you might try so-and-so. Been very helpful. So
Yeah.
always, when you're rejected, ask for a suggestion on where to go. Very often, it's not out the door, it's to somewhere else.
Wow. Very cool. I'm loving all this advice. I feel like everyone listening is going to gain so much from this. This is very exciting for me.
My mentor, who I adored, who also recently died yesterday, that's all I'm talking about is death. His statement was, getting old is quite enjoyable because
Yeah.
people mix up age and wisdom, and they keep forgetting that those two are not necessarily related. So
Yeah.
keep asking.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Moving on a little bit to like how you're so immersed in the community and your past projects of giving back. You are very well known for your philanthropy and just what drives you to give back and to some of those passions.
if you study philanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
the art of philanthropy and giving, you'll find out that people give for all sorts of reasons.
Right.
My personal one is I'm Jewish. I'm an ethnic.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of my culture. It's the part that I grew up with. My parents gave, and that's the way it just was part of life. Um, if I enjoy 3 meals a day and somebody only meals two, I should help that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
So that motivated me. Having said that, I've done a lot of fundraising, and what motivates you might be different. You
Mm-hmm.
might have a relative with a particular disease. You may want to honor your parents by giving me a large amount of money so I can build a new building at Fanshawe and name it after
Mm-hmm.
you. So there are different motivations for philanthropy. Decide what works for you and give in accordance with that need or that desire. It's not even a need, it's a desire.
Mm-hmm. And did you feel that that desire was always within you? Was it very
I do.
innately within you?
I do.
Yeah.
It was just there.
And it's probably, I would assume, one of the most fulfilling and satisfying
It's fulfilling in so
parts.
many ways.
Yeah.
If you give directly, it's very fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
My great friend John Drake, he and his wife and my wife and I went to Ethiopia, and we were way in the woods. And we were told, when you're in there, into the woods like that, bring things, not just money.
Mm-hmm.
So we brought notebooks and crayons, and we'd stop, and from the woods, kids would come out, and they'd line up, and our guide, they'd say thank you. And John turned to me and says, that's the most direct philanthropic I've ever felt.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, when you give to a university fundraising, you're giving a check. It's a different kind of giving because you see what the university is doing in the community and in the
Right.
world. So that's the one kind of thing. But you're talking about monetary giving. Philanthropy, there's another piece of it, and
Mm-hmm.
that's time. I can't tell you how great that has been in my life. People don't like to devote 10 years to a
Mm-hmm.
project. They want to do a project and give me a project and I can finish it and I'm done in 6 months. But when you go on a board like the university or the hospital or college, you're going to devote 8 years of your life,
Mm-hmm.
probably 2 terms. I have met the most wonderful people through that experience. There are people who volunteer their time. They're trying to make the world better. They're the people you want to hang around with. I go to a lot of charitable fundraising
Mm-hmm.
events. And somebody said, Bob, aren't you tired of that? I said, no, I'm spending time with the nicest people in London. Why
Yeah.
should I get tired of it?
That's really, that's honestly a little bit mind blowing to me. I just feel like when thinking of, philanthropy and giving back, I the whole aspect that you mentioned of time really escaped my mind. Like I was very just only thinking about monetary and what it feels like to give back like in a materialistic way, right? But the the whole concept of the amount of time that you give is a whole other ballpark that I didn't even think about. And it's, as you said, probably one of the most fulfilling. And I feel like when you really immerse yourself in those experiences, you're able to realize that you have so many wonderful people around you and that
Oh,
you're a part of something way bigger that feels way better than just signing a check.
well, there's difference.
Yeah,
You
I'm
should,
sure.
you should do both if you can, because money makes the world go round.
True.
But if you don't have it, give time,
Yeah.
because everybody needs volunteers. Somebody needs to
Yeah, it's so true.
pick up the excess food at the bakery and deliver it to the homeless. That's a job. It's not one that gets you a lot of publicity, but it's a very fulfilling job.
Yeah, I've just never, wow, I really love that. I really never placed so much importance on the I don't know if you call it a category, but the aspect of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's so important. So going on with the topic of philanthropy, what are some of your favorite maybe organizations or projects that you have that are like near and dear to your heart that you have worked on that maybe stick out to you?
Because I'm a little older and because I've been associated with so many different philanthropic, or I shouldn't say philanthropic, not-for-profit
Right.
organizations, I tend to get very focused with my time, with funding, and my focus. So if I'm involved with the Fanshawe College, I think Fanshawe College is the only thing you should give to.
Yeah.
Today, I'm not involved with any, as I don't think the world should be run by people my age. It should be run by people in their 30s and 40s. So I've withdrawn from active.
Right.
So to me, the areas that have my attention are the ones that are most common, and that's homelessness and poverty. I just, it breaks my heart to drive
Yeah.
around parts of the city and look at people that are suffering outside or they're hungry. The London Food Bank, run by the couple, have been fantastic in the city, and you see the need growing year after year after year. I don't know how we can not have our heart ripped out a little bit every time we see
I
that.
know. I agree. It's not an easy thing to see
No,
at
it's not.
all. And I think it makes the desire and the want to maybe get more involved in your community to help to give back a little bit stronger, which is a great thing. But, of course, I wish it wasn't a problem in the first place. But sorry, I do want to circle back to a comment that you said because I found it
Excuse me.
interesting. Why going back to the point you made about you think that the world should be run by 30-year-olds? Can you talk a little bit more about that? I don't know if that's a perspective. I hear that perspective a lot from young people, but I don't necessarily know if that's a perspective I hear a lot from, older generations. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Why? Because we were 30 and we were really active, and I was active in politics and active in all kinds of things. And then I got older. I didn't want to give it up because I liked the people and I liked the excitement of it. And I liked, even though I didn't run for politics, I loved being around the whole organization of political activity. But we should be giving it up. We've had our day in the sun. It's time for the next generation. Doesn't mean we don't participate, but we participate in a different way. My door is open for anybody who ever wants to talk to me about business or anything. I don't charge for it. It's in my head and it's free. So I like to be there, but I don't have the skill set that you do. I don't have the social media skill set, which is important. And quite honestly, your energy is better than mine today. So I want you to run the world.
And yeah, like you said, it doesn't mean that, you can't pave the way, right? Like we learn from other people, and you have so much wisdom that I don't, and you have so much more experience that I don't. So it doesn't mean that we can't learn from each other, and you would help the younger generation and those 30-year-olds too.
We certainly had more experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Wisdom, knowledge, that's another issue. My mentor was a man who died 2 years ago. He was 99. And for probably 15 years, the last 15 years of his life, I saw him every month. And I would go to his house as his health started to fail. And I would sit and talk with him. We'd have a cup of tea or coffee for an hour. I gained so much from his experience in life that he was able to pass on.
Right.
And that's what I want to do as I age, when I get older. That's what I want to do, is pass it on to the next generation so that they get the same benefit that I did from him.
Definitely. Definitely. I think we're just constantly learning from each other, and
We
that's
should.
one of the most beautiful things about just human interaction. I think we
agree.
learn so much just from being around each other.
I agree.
Yeah. So moving on, I am interested in knowing what advice you would give to young professionals who want to make a difference through philanthropy, or maybe even just get started, don't know where to begin.
Simple advice today is participate.
Yeah.
Young professionals and older professionals think that they are trained in a certain area and they don't have very much to give, an accountant or a lawyer. I only know that. No, you don't. You know a lot more. And go to London Community Foundation, go to United Way. And if you don't know anybody in the city, say, I would like to volunteer. What organizations would you suggest? Go on a committee, see if you like what they're doing. And that's how you get involved. You have to put yourself out. You have to take the time to get involved. This is a wonderful city for volunteerism. So I guarantee if you ask 10 people, you'll 3 or 4 of them are already involved.
Right.
See, maybe one of those organizations appeal. If you have a particular interest in something, check it out. Google it. Find out who's doing work in that area in London and just call them up. I'd
Hmm.
like to volunteer for you. Everybody will accept a volunteer.
Oh, yeah,
So that's
definitely.
what I say to professionals. Get involved. Take some time. And then if you get into leadership, you're lucky. I was lucky. But if you don't, be the unsung hero. Be the volunteer that drives and picks up the food and delivers it to the homeless. It's a great thing to do.
Definitely. And I'm actually really happy you mentioned that the leadership aspect, that you were lucky enough to be in that position of a leader. And so I'm curious to know what qualities or traits you think make a good leadership role or person in a leadership role.
Well, first of all, knowing that we learn through our ears, not our mouth,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be a good listener. In business, you have to listen to the advice of people who are working for you. And in the not for profit world, you have to listen to the needs of the community that you're serving. The really super people that I have met in both are humble. They understand that they're fulfilling a job, a role. They're not indispensable, and they're only one person and one thought. So if you try and combine those two of listening and learning with understanding that you're trying your best, but you have lots to learn, that's what I think is leadership.
Definitely. I agree. And I think it's almost, and I feel like it's also just okay to admit that you don't know things, that you don't know everything. And even going back to when you were saying your piece on how people could get involved, is it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to not know things. And I feel like
Total.
I find that that's something I see a lot in like, well, I won't even say our generation. I just think, a lot of people sometimes just have like it's the pride that gets in the way of starting or of asking a question or of even going your full potential because you don't want to admit to not knowing things, but it's perfectly
You're absolutely
okay.
right.
Yeah.
The advice that I have given to anybody working for me, and if they're then going out to deal with the rest of the world working for me, I tell them the most powerful question in the whole world is, can you help me? Don't walk in thinking you know the answer
Hmm.
and trying to convince them that your way is the right way. You're going to lose because people will become defensive. People want to help other people. We're social
Yeah.
animals. And if you say, can you help me? And you believe it, 95% of the time, they'll be of help.
Yeah, definitely. There's no shame in it. I think it makes everything stronger.
It does.
It really does.
Yeah.
So my next question for you, I'm just checking on the time here as well. How do you approach mentorship and what lessons have you learned from your own mentors? I know you spoke about your mentor that you spent a lot of time with.
Mentorship is a funny word.
Yeah.
I always think I'll be a mentor when I'm older. I don't like looking in the mirror sometimes.
Oh no.
Mentorship is something that I learned, I experienced very early in my life. When I was a young lawyer, I had a business transaction that was way beyond my capabilities as a young person.
Hmm.
And with the permission of my client, I went to a senior lawyer in the area. And I said to him, here are my papers. Can you look at them over? And he did, and he gave me a couple bits of advice. And eventually the transaction closed. So I wrote to the senior lawyer, said, it's closed. Will you send me your bill? And he said, oh, there'll be no bill, Bob. You're just getting started. Pass it on. And I thought, oh, there's my good life lesson
Yeah.
right there. Pass it on. The London Community Foundation did a experiment for about 10 years on mentorship and leadership.
Hmm.
They had volunteers of 30 to 45, about 25 or 30 of them, divided them 3 or 4 groups, and they would go to a not-for-profit in the city and say, do you have a problem with leadership, with fundraising, with organization or anything? Give it to us, and we'll spend 6 weeks and come up with a plan for you. And they would have two older members of the community as, quote, mentors to this group. I participated in that for maybe half a dozen years. It was fabulous to see people getting involved for the first time. They were in every profession or every job that you could think of, and they just want to get involved. So there are opportunities to utilize mentorship in the city. Almost every organization has people who will give you advice. And again, go back to the big ones like London Community Foundation, United Way, and see if they can direct you. Maybe college, maybe universities, it may be the hospital. They all want volunteers. And they'll have, the big organizations will have people focused on utilizing volunteers properly. So when you volunteer, they will find out what you're interested in and try and place you appropriately.
Right. And yeah, I think that's great. Switching gears just a little bit, but not too much. I want to know if you can think of or share a story of maybe a mistake or a failure in your past that has taught you a really valuable lesson, whether that was in entrepreneurship
I'm
or
sorry,
philanthropy or
we
business.
don't have that much time because I could spend hours telling you about my failures, quote, failures. Probably one of the major lessons I learned was to be focused.
Okay.
I was a lawyer and I was doing some real estate work on the side with a ex friend of mine from their ex classmate from Western, and it was the early '80s. Things were booming. The stock market was booming, so I borrowed money and went into the stock market. I don't know anything about the stock market. I'm a little guy in London, Ontario, and somebody in Arkansas makes a decision on trucks, and I'm win money or lose money.
Right.
And then all of a sudden there was the crash, just like that. And I had borrowed money, and the bank came and said, "Where's the money?" I was really big trouble at that time. Probably technically bankrupt, but the bank gave me some freedom, so I was able to overcome it. But I learned a really valuable lesson. Don't borrow money and go into an area that you don't know anything about. I don't mind borrowing money for real estate because I understand it. I don't mind borrowing money to buy a house because I'm going to live in it. But don't borrow money and go into a unknown arena unless you research and research, and then it's not unknown anymore. That was a big mistake for me.
True.
And I learned.
Yeah.
And I don't borrow money to go into the market
You
anymore.
learned your lesson, right?
I'm in the market, but it's with money that is excess.
Yes. Great advice. No, don't take a bunch of money out and enter a foreign territory that you know nothing about. Definitely. So how do you manage your time effectively while juggling these multiple roles? Entrepreneurship, real estate, business, philanthropy, law, family, all of it.
Yeah, first of all, you prioritize. To me, family is the most important. And so I've said to anybody who works for me, and I've said to myself, if there's a family need, you do it. You leave work,
Right.
you leave whatever you're doing, and you stay with your family. So in my personal life, when I'm juggling all these things, and there's no definitive formula that works every day, it is a balance all the time. So if my family's in good shape, and then I can spend more time in my business. If this needs it, or if my philanthropy area, not-for-profit needs it, you go over there. But it's a continual balance. It's not an easy thing, but it's manageable,
Yeah.
particularly if you have your priorities.
Yeah. And I like that you said, like it's not there's no definitive answer for that.
No,
It's not
there
a
isn't.
distinct thing every day. I think that's really important too, because I think just as humans, or I can at least speak for myself, that I feel like I'm always like, I want to crack the code to how I can just figure out life. And, once I crack the code of what my work-life balance is, I can apply that same thing to every day, and then I'll be good. I'll be fine. I won't be stressed and I won't whatever. But there is no definitive answer. And that balance, it's like a teeter-totter, right? Like it
All the
changes
time.
every day depending on. what needs
The
it.
newest research on stress says that a certain amount of stress is good for us.
Mm,
There's good stress and bad stress,
okay.
manageable stress and unmanageable stress. So we can't avoid stress in our life. It's A, how we manage it, and when we look at it, if we have control or we don't have control.
Hmm.
So
Focusing on the things you
good
can
luck in
control.
managing your stress in your life.
I've gotten a lot better at it actually, which is great, which is great. But actually, how do you have any tips for anyone, myself? How do you manage stress or when, that work-life balance gets a little harder to manage? How do you bring yourself back down?
I look at it this way. Do you know who your great, 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 great grandmother is? No,
Mm-mm.
nor do I.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to be. That's
Mm.
how important we are.
Oh, so it's my version of the we're living on a floating rock mindset.
Just relax.
Yeah.
It's over. It's
Yeah.
over. I remember sitting at a dinner party with a friend of mine who was a professor in the States, and it was at the time in the '60s when there was lots of he taught Black history, and they said to him, he was a white guy, and he said to him, "Jimmy, we love you. You're our professor, but get a gun because we are so frustrated. We're going to bomb 10 streets in Detroit, shut down the United States. We're ready for Armageddon because we can't stand what's going on in the States."
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people at dinner was an older, that's a relative term, an older math prof. And he was smoking a pipe and it was dripping down his shirt. He was a perfect absent-minded professor. He's from South Africa, and he said, "Just relax.
Mm-hmm.
This too will pass. The world is going to we'll figure it out." And those kinds of experiences and that kind of thinking makes you just try and take stress and just relax with it a little bit and
Like,
manage it.
why am I so stressed in the
Yeah,
first place?
deal it,
Nothing's that,
deal
yeah.
with it
Deal
as
with
best
it.
you can, but don't let it beat you up.
Don't let it beat you up. Don't let it control you. And this is not the first time you felt stress, and every time you felt like this before, you've gotten through it and you come out on the
Amazing,
other side
amazing how that is,
and you're fine.
and
So
you're
you
fine.
got through that, you'll get through this too. That's
Right?
what me and my friends say to each other when we're feeling like the world is just coming down on us. We're little specks of dust on a floating rock in
I
space.
like that one.
Well,
A speck of
we
dust on a
we are a
floating
speck
rock.
of dust on a floating rock in a never-ending space. We are so tiny
I
compared to everything
I
that's
like
the
that.
world
I'm going to
is.
steal that one.
Oh, good. I like that. Yeah, that makes me happy. I'm gonna steal. What was it that you said? You said the great great grandmother.
Right.
That's exactly how I
Same one.
feel. Exactly. So wanted to ask you, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? It could be in any realm, any aspect of life, but just a piece of advice.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Do it again. Um, I've had lots of successes and I've had lots of failures in the traditional sense of failures. I've had, I guess, goods and bads.
Hmm.
God, it's been a good run. So my advice is do it again.
Do it again. Just enjoy it
Just
and
enjoy it.
enjoy it while you can.
Yep, every day. Carpe
Yeah.
diem.
You almost don't know what you have when you have it, right?
Well, make sure you do
Make
know.
sure you do, because I
Make
feel like
sure
a
you
lot of
know
things
it.
happen and you don't realize how good it was until
Right,
it's over.
right.
You just wish you could go back there and say, wow, this is what's in front of me. Let me
Yeah,
just,
go for it.
yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Just really live in the present moment
Yep.
and appreciate everything that's around you. So, what is one widely accepted business rule or principle that you completely disagree with?
Oh, that's simple.
Oh, yeah? Wow, you got answers for
Work
everything.
hard, and you'll get ahead. I mentioned it
You did
earlier.
mention that earlier.
That's the business advice that is common, and there's more to it than that. It's not work hard. If an entrepreneur, you take risk.
Hmm.
If not, get a little bit of luck if you can.
Hmm.
But that is a general, absolute business rule is not true. It's not just plain work and you get ahead.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah. What is a mistake that in hindsight was the best thing that ever happened to you? Or maybe taught you something really good, changed your trajectory, changed the way you viewed things?
I don't have one.
Yeah.
I don't have anything that was my aha moment via mistake
Ah,
because I don't look at a mistake as negatively as most people do. I think it's a bump in the road, and once you pass the bump in the road, you forget it.
right.
It's like yesterday.
Right. Kind of the same thing we were talking about with rejection,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
like it's
So
not
I,
doesn't
I,
define who you are.
I can't answer that question. I don't have anything to
Yeah.
give to you.
If anything, I feel like it just speaks to that mistakes don't define you and that
For
it's
sure.
not gonna
That's a
it's
nice
not your
way.
be all
It's
end
a good
all.
way of saying it. I
Yeah, right?
agree.
It's not your
Yeah,
be all end all. It's just a bump in the road,
it's a
like you
bump in the
said.
road. Yeah.
And they just teach you.
Yep.
They just teach you. Um, I heard this, I was listening to a podcast once and I heard this kind of metaphor that I really liked. And it was this therapist. She says to her clients that when they make a mistake for the first time, she doesn't call it a mistake. She calls it a mistake. And then when you make it for the second time, then it's a mistake because it's like a repeated thing that you're doing and then it needs more attention. But when you make your mistake the first time, it's just like, okay, this is just something you did. Also, it's a bit of a funny name, so you can just laugh at it a little bit easier
Right.
and move on. But then, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, then it's a mistake you're making. And then that requires, some changed
Yeah.
behavior or whatever. But a little bump in the road at first is nothing to get you down.
Right.
I don't think. So, my next question for you is if you could have dinner with any historical entrepreneur, lawyer, philanthropist, author, anyone that's been super pivotal and inspirational for you, who would you pick?
List is long. So I
Yeah.
have a very large dinner party.
You could have your
But
45-person invite list next
I'll
week.
tell you who it would be today. I mentioned that I'm Jewish and Passover is coming
Yes.
up. We have 45 people at our house, and it's called the Seder, and I've been leading it for 50 years. So I do a lot of research on it. And so I've been doing some research. I would like to have dinner with Moses
Oh.
because I want to find out whether the escape from Egypt, crossing the Dead Sea, the sea parting, the 10 plagues, whether that was whether they were actual events or is it myth? I personally believe that myth is more powerful than truth. And if it's myth, it's a good myth. It's a good story. It shows of freedom, the value of freedom, and it has lots to do with belief in moving forward in times of adversity. So I'd love to talk to him and find
Yeah,
out.
so many questions, right? That's the beauty of the question.
That's
It's just
right.
you can spiral down all
Come
the
on,
things
did,
you would
did it
ask.
really
And
happen?
I know the way you're talking about it. It's like you're preparing for the dinner tonight. You're going to see
Exactly.
him at the dinner table. No, that's awesome. I think, yeah, there's so many questions that could be asked there. Just for time's sake, I do want to switch gears just a little bit. I have some questions about real estate and your experience with that. What is the craziest or most unexpected deal that you've ever been a part of? Real estate, legal.
Well, the craziest deal is I was part of a group that formed and bought a team in the World Football League. And so for a year, I was buying and selling human flesh of football players that I know nothing about. I
Uh-huh.
played, but that was irrelevant. And the World Football League was formed as a competition to the National Football League. It turns out it was the biggest fraud game in town. But I had two clients that we tried to bring the CFL to London. It failed. I'm sitting in my office as a lawyer, and I get a call. We just bought a team in the World Football League. Get on a plane and come to Portland, Oregon. That's where we bought a team called the Portland Storm. So for a year and a half, we were involved. We were flying all over, and it was crazy. Then the league folded, as it should have, but it had no base. But it was fun. It was crazy fun.
What a life you've lived. I feel like you have so many stories. Genuinely, I feel like, wow, that is wild. That does sound really fun though.
That's why the advice I gave to myself as a young person is just do it again.
Just do it again. Yeah, because wow, what an experience. Oh my gosh. Have you ever turned down a lucrative deal because it didn't align with your values?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My business partner for that I had for many years was given a proposal by a guy who I'd worked for as a lawyer a little bit, and he had a real estate development that had two tenants on it, and they were kind of their couple. He wanted us to partner. I said to him, no. I don't like the guy. I don't trust the guy. I don't want to have dinner with the guy. And my deal when I left law, when I was a lawyer, I was a plumber. I just had legal training, so I would work for anybody that needed my help. That's what I should do. As a business person, I have the right to choose who I want to be my partner. I said, I don't like this guy, and if I don't want to have dinner with him, I don't want to be partners with him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have any of the values that I had. He wound up doing bad deals with a whole bunch of people in London, and leaving the country.
Oh wow.
So yes, the answer is yes, and I have no regrets.
Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like that's a really, and I feel like that's almost a value in itself, is your values are so strong that it will, you know where to draw the line with. If something, you almost follow your intuition in that way, where this isn't something that's aligning with me, it's not feeling right, and I don't want to pursue this. And I feel like that's good advice for anyone, just to remember that your values are really important, and that just because you're in business and entrepreneurship doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything and get and follow every deal that's offered to you, every opportunity that's offered to you.
People don't understand being a big capitalist pig does not mean you're a big capitalist pig.
Yeah.
It means I want to make money the same way the taxi driver wants to make it, drive well and get a tip. So yeah, of course you've got values and you should keep them front and center when you're doing your work.
What's something that you believed strongly at the start of your career that you now see differently?
Again, I have to go back to the same adage of work hard.
Okay, yeah, that's a pillar for
I
you.
now understand that luck, being in the right place at the right time, and understanding the fact that you have to pull the trigger and say yes or no, particularly yes. No is easier, actually. No is easier than yes. Yes is a very hard.
I could see
That's why
that.
it's why it's got more letters than no. Because once you say yes, you're committed. When
True.
you say no, okay, that's it. Now let's go to a movie. So that's about it.
Yeah.
That's all. I think that's the only way I could answer that question.
No, that makes total sense. And I completely agree. Yeah, when you say no, it's like it doesn't involve you anymore. You
No,
can stop thinking about it. But when you say yes, not only are you committed, but you do have those what ifs and the unknown to think about. So in that sense, it can also be a bit harder because you're now like, okay, I took the risk, but oh my God, now I'm really in it.
I'll give you an example of the yes no.
Yeah.
A friend of mine sold cars when he was a young man, and he was taught that people are hesitant to say yes. So they'll come into a dealership. Well, do you have this color? Yes. Does it come with four wheels? Yes. Does it come with a windshield? Yes. They're looking for an excuse to say no because they can walk out easily. And so he said, so what he had to learn as a salesman is you say yes, 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 and then at some stage you turn it and say, if I can get you a car with a radio, would you buy it? Well, yeah, I guess so. You've turned it. You've turned the
Yeah.
no into the yes because eventually
Yeah.
they're going to ask for something that you have to say no to, and they're going to say, well, I'm sorry, we're going to go somewhere else.
Right.
So yes is harder.
Definitely. That's like a little psychology hack
I
right
know, isn't
there.
it? A
That
good
was a
salesman
little
tip.
psychology trick. Exactly. Oh my gosh, I've never thought about it that way. I really love this question. How do you personally define the term enough in terms of money, success, and legacy, happiness? Just where does it become enough for you?
Uh, the word enough has no connection to legacy.
Hmm.
If you're thinking in terms of legacy, you're not the right kind of person for me. Um, you do what you want to. Well, you do what you do because it feels good. You're helping the world. With respect to money, enough is very much appropriate.
Hmm.
Um, the studies show that enough money is a relative term. If you're single and you're just out of school, you have a level of enough money income. And then you have a partner, and then maybe you have children, and then maybe you have a house and a dog and a car and belong to the squash club, and that's enough. So each of those levels are enough.
Hmm.
After enough, the what people search for is happiness and lifestyle. Um, we have a company in Toronto that we still have, and we asked people after a number of years why did they like working for us, and they gave us the top three reasons, and it had nothing to do with money
Hmm.
because obviously we were paying them sufficiently, but it was you let us participate in the whole picture and you let us do our own life. So I said to the person involved with running the staff, what does that mean? He said, it means this. Everybody has a split screen. And if I walk up to somebody and say, you're watching a movie, they'll say to me, are you unhappy with my work? If so, fire me. I said, they would say, on the other hand, if you have something to do tonight and you need us to work all night, God, get a pizza and a case of beer and we'll work all night and I'll forget my plans.
Hmm.
Because they had made enough money to satisfy their lifestyle.
Hmm.
And now they were worrying about, to satisfy their needs. Now they were worried about lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that's where I think, that's how I define enough was in my various stages in life. And I think we should all look at that. And it's not an absolute number, but it's a term that changes from time to time. It's an amount that changes from time to time.
Yeah. I like that perspective because I do feel like it's a very normal and human almost issue, I guess you would say, to be in that hamster wheel of feeling like
Hmm.
you'll never have
Right.
enough, right? Like there can never be too much money. Oh, I want more and more and more. But I do think it changes depending on where you're at in life. But then also, like you mentioned earlier, like it's not about if your term of enough is with legacy, like you'll never get there because I don't think you'll ever be satisfied.
I
But
guarantee in your
yeah.
life, you'll always find somebody who's richer, who's in
Mm-hmm.
better physical shape,
Mm-hmm.
who can run faster, who's got better hair
Yep.
and everything.
There's
So,
always going to be somebody better than you.
exactly.
So you just have to try to be the best version of yourself and
Exactly.
kind of cancel out that outside noise and just work towards being the best version of you that you
Yep.
can, right?
Yep.
Um, okay, so this is a great question to end off on, I think, because I know we're running out of time here. Um, if you could only pass down three lessons to future generations, or I guess maybe just more simply put, give three pieces of advice to my generation, I guess, and everyone listening, what would they be?
The first one is spend some time and know yourself.
Hmm.
Don't look at what people expect of you, what people are thinking, well, you should do this or you should do that. Spend time with yourself and try and be honest, which is hard, with yourself.
It is hard.
This is who I am. The second one is go for it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Um, and accept that life is not a straight line.
Hmm.
It's it's a wonderful bumpy road. That's what it is. But it's going to Oz. It's that golden road, and just follow it and have a great time. So
Hmm.
those would be the three pieces of advice I would say to your generation.
Definitely. From your first piece of advice, how do you I think it can be quite hard to sometimes cancel out that background noise of everyone of people telling you what you maybe should do or maybe you're making decisions based on pleasing others. I know there can be a lot of stress about trying to please your parents or your family or your partner and doing what you think you have to do. So how do you kind of separate that and really listen to your heart and your gut when you're following your path?
You and I are going to go to Indigo, and I'm going to have you a great big section on
Please.
psychology.
Okay.
And we're going to read about 50 different books that are trying to answer that
Okay, great.
question.
Okay, great.
It's not a simple
It's
question.
true.
Just keep working on it, though.
Yeah, life process. It's a life thing,
It
right?
is.
Life process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll book off the rest of my day so we can go to Indigo, right? Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with
It's a
me.
pleasure.
This was a wonderful conversation. I genuinely do feel like I could sit here and talk to you for hours. I feel like you have so
That's-
many stories and so much advice and so much experience
But
to
you don't
share.
understand. I'm feeding off your energy.
Oh, good. That makes me
Thank you.
so
Thank you for the interview.
that makes me so happy to hear. Thank you so much for joining us. It was
Okay.
great.
Bye.
Thank you.